Hey, Chamber members, Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing and Communications at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. Today, I am joined by...
I'm Ben Jackson. I'm certified financial planning practitioner. We're with Jackson Financial. We are located on South Main Street in Blacksburg, Virginia.
Awesome. So thank you for being here, Ben. Second episode. So first episode, I asked everybody what success means to them. For this one, I'm going to ask, what does failure mean to you?
Yeah, well, very excited to be here. I always love doing these, Alan. I think you do a great job. So I appreciate you having me. But failure, so I'll kind of do that one in a little bit of a joking way, but whenever I think about failure, this is kind of what I think about. So first I'll say in our family, we go faith, family, football, okay? And failure is the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I've been rooting for the Cowboys since I watched football in the early 90s. You know, I was there I was not there, but I was watching for the Super Bowl wins, and it has been a struggle. Mm-hmm. You know, so in my opinion, I think the organization is a failure. And even I root for them every Sunday, while football's on. But my son, he's decided he wants to be a Chiefs fan. You know, he'll probably be an Eagles fan now. But,
right, yeah.
But regardless, so I think the failure part is I think they have an owner that won't allow their staff to do their jobs and do their job roles, general manager and so on, or the owner is the general manager. And then therefore, I think that they don't maybe get the right players in the right positions to do their jobs, to win games, because they have one ultimate goal is to win games. Well, I think that I relate that to us, and how our business is. So I'm the owner, but I don't really see it that way. I'm just a teammate, just a team player. So my job is to do the exact opposite, is to allow my staff to fulfill their roles. Like Patrick has been with me for years as one of our planners, and I think that we want him to fulfill his role and our other staff members. And then, relating it to the Cowboys, I think our clients are probably our players, on the field. They're the one playing the game. They're the one that, whatever life circumstance they're in, we want to put them in the best spot to navigate, to meet their goals. So we want to do the exact opposite of the Cowboys. That is what failure is. And also, at the beginning of every year, we sit down as a whole team, and we come up with, usually 3 sets of goals, and our goals, probably a little bit different than other folks, but our goals are never sales-based goals. So we don't have any sales-based goals. We do one set of goals on how many of our current clients, how often do we want to connect with them, and how often without bothering them, but also make sure they're on the track that they want to be on. Another set of goals, how much marketing and relationship building do we want to do with that set of time? And then our last, we always try to add maybe a big ticket item. What club do we want to join? What additional role do we want to take on with some of our organizations like the Chamber that we already are involved in? Or who do we want to hire? Or what licensure do we want to get that year? But we want to consistently grow, even if it's not maybe sales-wise, but we want to grow our knowledge, our connections, and things like that. So failure would be not doing those things, not meeting one of those goals, or not allowing staff to do what they need to do. Would be my definition.
I really like the idea of putting it in terms of the team too. I feel like there are a lot of NFL teams you can look at, and you've got fans who are fans for life. It doesn't matter win, lose. I think there's something to be said about that too, with keeping the consistency. Even in the face of failure, in the face of losing seasons, being able to say, okay, great, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep at it. Now, there's a certain point of that where you reach, I feel like Pinky and the Brain said this, where every night it's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to try to take over the world. Well, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But looking at that lens and the breakdown, what do you think the growth aspect comes into it, where you go, okay, great, we're going to do this particular licensure, what part of that growth is about the business versus how much of it is fully, hey, if the people I'm working with, if they grow, the business will grow?
I think it's, for me, it's basically all, about the people I'm working with. I think that, so me personally, and I don't think very many businesses would be, without those staff members, we're nothing. If I didn't have the other people that I work with, we wouldn't be anything without clients either. But specifically for this, those employees that I work with, they play a vital role in your business. So I think, and I think I would be doing wrong if I didn't, not only allow, but kind of persuade them to grow their with their life, whatever that is. And that's kind of what we believe. So and when we sit down, I think that's more important than anything. And then I have to jump on board too. I have to grow with them.
Yeah.
So whatever we're doing, I have to listen. I have to listen to what they want to do, what they're trying to accomplish, what role they want to be in, and I need to listen to that and then help them get there. I think it is my job. But yeah, I think that's at utmost importance for the staff members to grow in any office.
So you mentioned there as well, like you look at the marketing pieces, you look at the clubs and things you can join. Talking to Mr. 2024 Ambassador of the Year here, but why, especially in your industry, is that so important? Because I know there are certain things with marketing, there are words that you are not going to say. We'll bleep them out if we need to, just like they're a dirty word. But why is the group connection and that direct connection, why is that so important to you?
Well, for me, there's two types of people that I'm going to do business with. And that's people I see all the time and trust and I build a relationship with, or that's people that come from a referral. And usually that's off someone I see all the time and trust and build a relationship with. So I think what we do, we deal with people's finances. That is one of the most important things. I mean, I know health is important. I know family is important, but finances is up there. And you have, in my opinion, you really want to trust someone before you do business with them. I wouldn't recommend to do business with anybody, including myself, unless you trust me, or anyone in my office. So I feel like by building those relationships and connections and showing people that, hey, we're here, we're part of the community, this is what we do. We care about the community. We care about you. We care about other businesses. We want to help other businesses grow. I think that in turn, helps us grow tremendously. Without those connections, why would anyone come to Ben Jackson and do business with me? So I'm a certified financial planner practitioner, but that doesn't mean anything, unless you trust me.
Right.
So I think by showing up, doing those things, and secondly, we enjoy those things. Like we love helping out the community. We do Rotary Club. That's mostly a volunteer club. Patrick and I in the office are both members of that. In Blacksburg. So but it's a huge part, I think, of any trust profession. I think that's a huge part, is to show that, hey, this is who I am, and you can. I'm just like you. I'm in the community, and you can trust me.
So I know this because with Case, I see Patrick very often, and this is not a question I prepared for you because I just thought about it. He mentions fairly often, at least last year, that y'all had a higher than normal number of death claims.
Yep.
So when you get into some of those pieces and life insurance, what are the things that people should be kind of looking out for and kind of planning? I know it's different for everybody, so we can't really get too specific, but what are things that people need to be preparing for in those policies and some of those? Because I'll give you a personal example. We had a great aunt pass away not that long ago. She was 96. And when everything got said and done, the life insurance came back and said, actually, this policy hasn't been paid on. We can't do anything. What are some of those pieces that people can like plan for and also make sure that they are getting their family involved, letting people know, hey, if this doesn't happen, if I'm not of sound mind, this still has to happen?
Yeah, no, that's a great thought, great question. So I think as humans, most of us don't want to think about death. We don't want to think about not being here. I know I don't. And if someone had never told me before I did this, I was a teacher for 7 years, and but while I was doing that, if someone had never told me you need life insurance, I would have never thought about that. So I think it's important to tell people, but then we still may not think about it, after we hear about it, like, hey, we know we need those, end of life planning, whether it's life insurance, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, all those different things. But helping people to plan for that, I think there's also a fear that life insurance is very costly. And it's not. You can find a program that fits your particular budget for most people. Most people can do that, and but it may not be the same program that your neighbor has, or your mom has, or your sister has, or brother, and that's fine. Everyone's different. It's each individual situation, like you said. I think our job, though, is to find out really, what do you want to protect? So if you're not here anymore and you have a 5-year-old, or you have a 16-year-old, or you're single and don't have any, underage kids, that's 3 different situations. What do you want to protect, and how long do you want to protect, and how much money? And then it's our job to kind of come back and say, well, this is probably what you need to make sure this person or these people are taken care of. I think that's step 1. And then step 2 is, once we get the amount, then we have to find a program that fits your budget. And and I think we don't want to sell anything. So for us, being independent, we want you to have life insurance, but we will run that through how many carriers we need to find the correct program that fits your personal health profile, your budget, and the amount of insurance you need. And I think that's scary. It was for me. To buy that, and I remember the agent that sold me my first life insurance policy said, "How much do you think that's going to cost?" Before he told me, and I said, I was like, I have no clue how much that's going to cost. I was like, but I was already trying to get out of it at that point. As soon as he asked me, I was like, well, I'm not buying that. Yeah. Because I quit thinking about what am I buying it for, and I started thinking about, how is this going to hurt my budget? And it's true. It is a commitment, and it's not a tangible. Things like life insurance, power of attorneys, wills, trust, things like that you may need. Those are not things that you hold in your hand and look at and say, hey, I bought this. Yes. Those are things that you may feel like, well, I see money go out the door every single month or every year or whatever it is, and I'm not getting anything, you know? And I think that's something that we have to communicate and educate about also. Because
realistically, it is an investment, but it's not an investment that you will see the return on. I was going to say, hopefully, you can't see, your family might, but I also, with that, I feel like there is sometimes that thought of, if I go the lowest I possibly can, I think about car insurance and stuff like that as well. It's like the lowest possible. And there are times where, that makes sense. But when my brother died, for example, he had a policy through my parents. It was $10,000. Beyond that, there was still another $6,000 that still had to be paid just for funeral costs and all of those things. So it's hard to fathom now, but it's up there. Yeah. With retirement, in that same vein, what is that something that someone should be thinking about now?
Yeah. Well, so the younger you are, with retirement planning, and once again, I didn't think about retirement planning when I was, probably all 7 years of teaching that I had, before my 12 years doing this, I never thought about retirement planning. And I started thinking about it as I was getting licensed and stuff like that, and educating myself, but also when I saw people retiring, I was like, okay, this is what they have, this is what they did, this worked, this didn't work, and so forth and so on. But retirement planning for a young person, would be the compounded interest. If you look at those projections that you can just go online and look at, or we could do one for you, and you look at those types of numbers, and you put in X amount of dollars per month, or whatever you want to do, and you look at that over a 30-year stretch, you may put in, and you look at the value, the projected value after 30 years, you may have only put in 1/4 or 1/3 of that value, and people don't realize that. They think, well, if I'm saving $100, after 30 years, well, it's going to be $36,000, $100 a month, 12 months, 30 years. I think that math adds up to be $36,000. That's probably not going to be the case. You're probably going to gain interest, or you're going to have some type of market growth or fluctuation anyway as time goes on. So I think that's the first thing is, but secondly, I think in the environment we're in, it's hard to think about retirement, because you have a college graduate that comes out of college, they have student loans, they're probably looking for a place to live, maybe an apartment or a home, maybe have to buy a vehicle if they, and then you're talking about, well, maybe you need life insurance, maybe you're getting married and you have a kid, maybe, you have all these different things. Retirement is probably not on your mind at that point, and I understand that completely. I think that with anything, I think my job is to help you meet your financial goals. And if retirement is not a priority when you're 25, that's fine. Yeah. We'll look at retirement later. But it's also my job to educate you on, if you put $25 in or $50 in or $500 in, whatever situation you're in, this is what it could potentially be in the future. Now, the older people get, obviously retirement becomes a bigger and bigger priority, and the closer they get there. Just like myself, it's big time on my mind, a lot more than it was 20 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And I still have 25 plus more to go, but it's still, I run projections, quarterly, maybe semi-annually on my own to make sure, because I think, what do I want to have in retirement? So mid-age person, what do you want to have in retirement? And if that is sitting on your front porch drinking coffee and eating tuna and ramen noodles, that's great. That's fine. We need to plan for that. If that's traveling to Greece and Italy and all over the world, that's great. We need to plan for that. But that's where it comes in, kind of a back-end approach. What do I want my retirement to be? What are my goals? When do I want to retire? And then how much do I need to save now to get there? Yeah. And if that doesn't work, okay, that's fine. Let's adjust our goals, or let's adjust how long we're going to work, or our budget currently, or whatever that is.
And is there any point that is too early? Because I TikTok, Facebook, all the things where you see people that are the gurus, like giving information, are like, hey, when your baby comes out, start doing this. Is there anything in that is like, all right, you can, but should you?
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. I think that's each individual situation. Honestly, today I have a meeting with some of my very good clients. Their daughter just got her first part-time job, and she's been at it since the summer, I think. So it's been 6 months. But recently got her first job. Her dad is bringing her we're meeting at a coffee shop to talk about a Roth IRA. She may not start one. She may start one. I don't care. My job, I do care for her, but I don't, I'm not going to sell her something. But my job is to educate her and let her know what it could be and could not. Now, I have a feeling Dad's going to say, this is what you're doing. But,
right, yeah.
And she is probably, I haven't met her yet, so I don't know her date of birth and whatever, but I know she's a college student, so 20, maybe 18 to 22, something like that. and she is looking at a Roth IRA because of the tax deferred or potential tax free growth that they provide, for the future. And so that's great. I mean, just so coincidentally, I'm having that meeting later today, but also I don't think there's too early of a time to plan what you want to do. But I do think you don't want to put yourself in a bad budget situation because, and I may be different than every other retirement person in the world or financial person in the world, but I don't think that I want anyone putting themselves in a bad budget situation where they can't eat or worried about gas money because they're doing some type of retirement planning. Eventually that has to come if you want to retire, but it doesn't need so for everyone's a little different. What situation you're in and when can that actually happen, but you also living your life. Yeah, and there's a fine line there, and I wish I knew the magic number on that, but I think for each individual it's kind of whatever situation.
Patrick said it to me really well one time. We had a 1-to-1, and I mentioned, I was like, I think our biggest problem is the fact that we buy groceries and then we end up eating out anyway. And he was like, look, if you set your budget for one or the other, it doesn't matter if you're eating out every day. If that's what your budget is, stick to it. It's just about setting the goals and expectations. All right. Well, we've covered one half of this with death. Next, we're going to talk about Ben Franklin's other inevitable taxes right after the break. Jackson Financial in Blacksburg, Virginia is an independent, certified financial planning firm that serves primarily the New River Valley, but is also licensed in North Carolina, Tennessee, West Virginia, Ohio, and Florida. In a world full of anxiety and confusion, they strive to provide a clarity and peace of mind. From retirement solutions to wealth management, their insight into sophisticated financial strategies can help make your investment goals a reality. Their first priority is to help you take care of yourself and your family. For more information, visit their website at benjacksonfinancial.com. That's benjacksonfinancial.com. Back to the episode. All right, we're back. Before we dive into things, I want to say thank you to Grand Home Furnishings for providing our furniture in here. Makes it much more cozy and comfortable to record, so appreciate that. So taxes, everyone's favorite topic. One of the biggest things I feel like people don't necessarily gauge or understand is the difference in what you are as a financial planner versus an accountant. And I think sometimes it's easy to think, all right, I'm saving money by going to one or the other. How do you interact with accountants? How do you interact with customers? And how does that difference make up to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For one, I don't believe that an accountant and a financial planner are interchangeable. I think, to be completely protected, you have to have both. And furthermore, I would also argue an insurance agent that you can trust and potentially a lawyer, depending on what type of business you're running and or setting up or whatever if you need those legal things, or if you're doing estate planning, so all those things. So what the financial planner does is we look at everything. We look at the tax planning. We look at the investment planning, which is a lot of times what people think, well, that's what they do. They do investments. But we also look at the insurance planning, make sure you're protected, make sure you're getting the lowest cost. We look at the estate planning, the wills, the POAs, your trust, and we may look at, debt management. Are you in debt? How to get out of it? So that we have concepts for all of those things, but when it gets down to the details of actually doing your taxes or doing your will, we don't do that. The attorney does that, or in this case, the tax advisor, the CPA, or the accountant will do that for you. Now we look at a broad approach on everything. It's comprehensive, but we say, what do we need to do to save money on taxes or when to pay taxes? And the accountant then takes that information and they will put that together and give you, this is what your tax return may look like if you follow this advice. Now the accountant, they probably won't give that advice because they don't know everything else you have going on. Whereas the financial planner knows everything that's going on, but typically we don't do taxes. So we say, go to your accountant and get, so they're very, very different. If the financial planner did taxes, then we wouldn't be a financial planner anymore because we wouldn't have time. We'd be doing taxes all the time. Or if the tax advisor did financial planning, they wouldn't have time to do taxes anymore and help you with, whenever you can pass through on your S Corp, to your individual, the taxes, and maybe you don't have to anymore or things like that. That is where the financial planner may tell you, but then the tax advisor, that's how it's going to affect you. I personally have a CPA. I understand a lot about taxes or I should. But I use, shout out to Jeff Call over at Cook, Lavender, Massey and Company over in Blacksburg. I use Jeff and he's great. Anytime we partner on my taxes, I feel like, and I tell him what goal I want to accomplish here and what I'm trying to do. And he tells me how that affects me and stuff that he does his magic on it. Very good to work with. I think, it's vital, very, very important that you have both because, a tax advisor is great, but when you come in, their number one thing may be like, well, you owe $2,000 in taxes. Go contribute to a traditional IRA, whatever, and you may owe zero on your taxes. That's probably true. But how does that affect everything else you have going on in your life? Right. How does that affect your budget? How does that affect your college funds? How does that affect your, and also another thing that we look at is right now we're under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts 2018. Most of those reforms are potentially expiring in 2025. We take that into consideration. My biggest question to someone, because tax time is scary. It's very nervous, obviously. But, one of my biggest questions is, should we be deferring these taxes or should we actually go ahead and pay taxes? What situation are you in? Are you going to make more money in the future or are you going to make less money in the future? Are the tax rates going to be higher or lower? And we don't know that, but in the future, what right now do you have going on? Is your business earning a lot of profit? Are you taking some losses? What do you have going on that, more than just like not paying the tax bill, but how does it fit your overall plan? And then like I said, the CPA or the accountant in general can put that together for you and tell you, well, this is what it changes by doing that.
We need to have a CPA on here or an accountant because I don't fully know the difference between the letters. But, I think that's something that happens in all industries. Everyone comes in and has certain acronyms, and I'm just like, great, cool, awesome. In that same vein, so as the financial planner, what you're talking about isn't just you're doing this just on an individual basis. You'll work with businesses as well. How does that kind of come into play in differentiation? Are you mostly working with the business owners? Are you sitting down with each of their employees separately? How does that kind of work?
No, that's great. So there's a couple different routes that we do there. So it depends on the size of the business and what the business owner wants, because that's the decision maker. And typically of the business, whoever owns it or the partners or whatever it is. So first we want to find out, what are you trying to accomplish? And most of the time it is they want protection and they want, savings for themselves. They want to know how their tax situation could change. And most people, and I tend to think most people are good, most people, they want their employees to have something. And so that's where that comes in. Now, your most traditional thing that people think is 401k. A lot of times, though, the administrative expenses on those are larger than other types of plans, and people don't want to do a 401k because of the administrative expenses. And I completely get that. They're hard to set up, and or they're not hard to set up. They're just expensive to set up would be a better word. And then we would lean towards, maybe a SEP IRA or a simple IRA and other options that the business owner has for their employees that could also contribute or be contributed to for them. And if that's the case and they want something that they're going to have employees to contribute to, then we go down to the employees and find out, well, how do you want your money invested? Because you may have a 60-year-old and a 20-year-old that's both working for the same company, and they may have a different risk tolerance, that they may not want, they may have different goals. So both, we want to help out the whole business, because I think, the business owner, obviously, well, we talked about retirement a minute ago, but someday they're going to retire probably or sell the business. So they want to be set up for that, but no one wants to turn over employees every 3 months or 6 months. We want to keep employees. We want to hire good. And part of that is, we may not be in a stage right now, but someday we're probably going to think about retirement or benefits in general. And when that day comes, we may be picking an employer that has something to offer, trying to help out. So we work with both, but it's really at the business owner discretion on what they're trying to accomplish. And of course, we could always work with someone on an individual basis outside of the employer. But, for the employer plans and for that particular question, it would be both depending on what the business owner wants.
And a lot of what I'm kind of hearing, both with that and the planning of taxes and working with both, we've talked, we had some recent Business 101 recordings. Those will be coming out throughout the year, so you can't go listen right now. But something we talked about in a lot of them was the importance of planning in the long-term sense, not just reacting. So would you say that when you're working with you on the taxes aspect and then you're going to a CPA, that you're doing more of that long-term look at versus, hey, it's just this year, this popped up, what can I do right now?
Yeah, definitely for us. We're looking long-term. I mean, there's short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, but absolutely. If anyone has an idea that's my client or comes to me for advice or whatever, and they have an idea of something they want to accomplish, then my first thing is going to be, well, why do you want to do that? And they're going to tell me, well, it gives me this. It is usually immediate.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, that's great. All right, let's look at how this affects everything else. And I'm going to show them every time the long-term potential effects that this will have by doing this. So that $1,000 deduction that you received, could cost you $5,000 in the future, or it could save you $10,000 in the future. Whatever we're doing there, and that back to the accountant's usually telling them that.
Right.
You could do this and help with this, and we're like, absolutely. Let's look at that and see how it affects. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it doesn't fit their overall picture, their holistic picture that well. But either way, we're going to run the numbers.
Right.
We're not just going to say, yeah, go do it, because we want a full, it's all about what's the final goal. And usually if we're talking about retirement or being successful in whatever, that's usually not, you're not going to mention a goal for 1 month from now. You're going to talk about 10 years,
right?
20 years, or whatever that time frame may be.
So before we go, one other thing you mentioned is investment and risk. And I want to talk a little about that because it makes me think everything you do with financial planning, everything you're doing with your investment portfolio is always going to be a risk. There's no, if you had a surefire answer, you'd probably be in the mob, and we'd have to figure that out. Yeah. For that, and when people are talking to you about those pieces, what is kind of that tolerance that you think about or you look at with them?
Yeah, so that's another great topic that I enjoy talking a lot about. So, first thing, risk tolerance and risk capacity. That's what I tell people. Those are two different things. So I'll start with risk capacity and kind of back into risk tolerance. So your risk capacity is the amount of risk that your financial profile would allow you to take without harming your financial goals. Okay. So, and then your risk tolerance is how you feel emotionally about risk. What if I see my portfolio drop by $10? Am I going to call my advisor? Am I going to call my planner? Am I going to take my money out? And that would be a very low risk tolerance. But so a wealthy person, with millions of dollars could have a lot of risk capacity because they may not plan on ever spending that money, and they have a lot of room to grow if they wanted, but their risk tolerance could be minimal. It could be like, I don't want to see my money go down by 1 penny. And that would be, zero risk tolerance. So, when we're wading through that, I think it's important to explain, this is what you have going on. So based on your goals that you have, this is the amount of risk that you probably could take and be fine that you could meet your financial goals and possibly improve your financial goals. But we also, how do you feel emotionally about that risk? What are you going to do when that happens? And both of those are extremely important. And I tend to lean that risk tolerance, the emotional part, is probably more important because it's the client's money.
Yeah.
They're the one work for it, and it's so we will do what they want to do, but we've given education there.
Right.
In the meantime.
Because, like you said, someone could have super high tolerance, be like, oh, yeah, it's not a problem. But then financially, that capacity does not back up that feeling.
That's exactly right.
It honestly, to tie it back to the football, it makes me think of Super Bowl weekend when I had my little sports betting app, and I told Rachel, I was like, they gave me money to do it. I've already pulled out any money I put on, so great. Don't mind if I lose anything. But at the same time, when I was doing stuff, I was like, oh, it's a pretty safe bet that so-and-so is going to score a touchdown. And then after the game, it's like, well, I lost $20 because they didn't score a touchdown on my safe bet. It's an ebb and flow. So anything else you want to leave off, let people know before we head out?
No, I think it was great talking to you, Alan. I appreciate you having me in, and hopefully it was informative and help people out, and kind of what we do.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. One more time, let people know where they can find you on website, all of those things.
Yep. So it's Ben Jackson, and we're at Jackson Financial, 1901 South Main Street in Blacksburg, Virginia. Our website is benjacksonfinancial.com. Phone number 540-505-5371.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Make sure you like, download, subscribe, all of the things so that you get updates whenever a new episode comes out or when any of our other content drops. Small business workshops, business 101s, all of those things. In the meantime, make sure you go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.